Hi, everybody. Welcome to another issue of the Brain Matters podcast. I'm Margie Meacham, founder of Learning to Go and author of Brain Matters, How to Help Anyone Learn Anything Using Neuroscience. And my guest today is Bruce Tulgan. He is the president of Rainmaker Thinking, author of many best-selling books. The latest one, the one we're going to talk about today, is the 27 Challenges that Managers Face, a step-by-step solution to nearly all of your management problems. And the reason I asked Bruce to talk to us today is because there is such a tight connection between the practical situations he deals with in this book and what we know about human behavior in organizations through neuroscience. So I think this will be a really fun discussion. And Bruce, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh,
How are
thank you
you doing?
so much for including me. Thank you.
Well, great. The first thing I want to ask you about the 27 challenges managers face, because I know the response to the book has been really huge, is what made you want to write it and why now?
Well, we've been doing research on the front lines of the workplace for 21 years, and one of the questions we ask leaders and managers every day is, what's the hardest thing for you about managing people? And we ask managers, what real challenges in the real world are you struggling with? And so we've asked that to hundreds of thousands of managers over the last 21 years, more than 200,000 managers over the last 21 years. And the 90% of those responses boiled down to 27 different challenges that appear over and over and over again. Now, the other 10%, are idiosyncratic responses that are all over the map. But people sometimes say to me, why 27 challenges? And I say, I don't know. That's just how many there were, because it's the ones that keep recurring over and over and over again. I'm a brand new manager, just promoted from within my team. And that was hard to go from being a peer to a leader. Or I'm a brand new manager coming in from the outside to take over an existing team. Or what about when you have a team, but then you hire a new member, you add a player to the team? What do you do then? Or how do you get people to increase productivity? Or how do you get people to improve their attitudes? What do you do if you have somebody with a bad attitude? Or what do you do if people are pretty good, but you have a hard time getting them to go the extra mile? So these are the kinds of questions that come up over and over and over again, the challenges that managers say, that they face. So I did this book. Look, I did a book back in 2007 called "It's Okay to Be the Boss," which is all about the getting leaders to go back to the fundamentals of management. What we found in our research is that what's missing in management relationships, 9 out of 10 management relationships, what they're missing is the old-fashioned basics, that managers who spend time with their people, communicate in a clear way, spell out expectations, help people keep track of how they're doing in relation to expectations. So, so that book came out in 2007. Our research has continued. We do these seminars for managers every day. And the 27 challenges, in some ways, it's a sequel to "It's Okay to Be the Boss," because "It's Okay to Be the Boss" has the back to fundamentals approach. The 27 challenges is kind of the application of the fundamentals to the most common challenges managers face. At least based on their responses to our questions.
Okay, great. Well, in thinking of something that recurs all the time, I really wasn't surprised to find that in your research, the most common request people have for their manager is better communication. And this story really hasn't changed since we've started talking about management. So why do you think it's so hard for managers to be better communicators?
Yeah, you're exactly right that, what's the common denominator in the experience of managers? So, these same 27 challenges recur over and over and over again. But the big punchline is, what do the most effective managers do? they communicate in a much more effective way. And when these things don't go well, almost always what's going wrong is the communication is not working. We do a lot of work with the United States Armed Forces, I'm proud and honored to say, and I had a 4-star general tell me a number of years ago, leaders only do 2 things. They make decisions and they communicate. And this general said, and most leaders don't have a heck of a lot of decision-making power, so mostly it's just communication. And if you do have decision-making power, if you don't communicate, you don't make good decisions. And if you don't communicate well, even if you do make good decisions, it's very hard to get them executed properly. So, communication is the beginning, middle, and end of leadership. It's the primary tool that leaders have to gather information and to create alignment and execution focus, to make expectations clear, to help people understand how they're doing in relation to expectations, to help people work faster, better, miss fewer details. It's the number one tool managers have to help people figure out where to get the resources they need or what to do if they can't get those resources. It's the number one tool managers have to help people course correct if they need to learn new skills, especially kind of incremental learning. It's the number one tool managers have. And so when managers are not communicating in a clear, structured, substantive way with their people, things go wrong. And when things are going wrong, right or average, frankly, when managers communicate in a high structure, high substance manner, things just go a heck of a lot better.
And that high substance and high structure is a theme that runs through your book and other books that you've written. And as you were talking about the armed forces, I could definitely see it. The high structure is something they've really made an art of. Well, what about people in today's ordinary business situation? It seems to me that high structure and high substance are a little bit harder to accomplish. Do you have any tips on how they can bring that to their communication style?
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. And what managers tell us is, yeah, great idea, buddy. But, follow me around sometime, right? In the real world, what managers tell us is, gosh, I don't have enough time. Not only that, but, if you really communicate with people in a very clear, structured way, sometimes you have conflicts, they push back, maybe they'll think I'm a jerk. If you really communicate with people in a strong, highly engaged way, well, gosh, am I going to seem like I'm micromanaging them? Maybe some people will feel picked on and like I'm favoring others because, if you really drill down and start managing people in a high structure, high substance way, what you find very quickly is what works for one person doesn't always work with another person. That tuning into each person means, it's high structure, high substance for everybody, but for one person it might be you have to talk to them every day. For someone else, maybe it's once a week. For one person, you have to help them focus on the to-do list. For other people, you're having bigger picture conversations. Some people you need to speed up. Some people you need to slow down. Some people you need to help them stop behaving inappropriately. Or, some people are having a hard time at home. Or some people are grumpy at work. Some people are so cheerful. What you really want to do is encourage them to spread their attitude all over the office. Or the factory or whatever the workplace happens to be, or the hospital floor, or wherever your workplace is. You have to realize that if you're a manager, what's happening around you is a whole bunch of work is getting done, and Everybody's getting interrupted all day long. Most people have more to do than they have time, and so the real world, managers second guess themselves. They want to be liked. They don't, and often just the day gets away from people, and that, I would say, the number one thing that gets in the way is people have the perception that they don't have time. The irony is that if you don't spend time up front in advance with high structure, high substance communication, things go wrong and you end up spending a heck of a lot more time. So the irony is that people think they don't have time. That probably the number one obstacle, I don't have enough time. But it's sort of like, I don't have enough time to take a walk every day, but then maybe you have a heart attack and you die young. Whereas if you take a walk every day, gosh, that takes an hour every day, but then you're going to live longer.
Right. Yeah. So it's really more about priorities, isn't it?
Well, so much of time management is about priorities. I always tell people priorities are not about what you're going to do. It's about what you're probably not going to get a chance to do. And in the case of spending time in high structure, high substance management, what's the alternative, right? The way most managers spend their management time is they touch base lightly with people. How's everything going? Everything on track? Any problems I should know about? They tell people, hey, my door is always open. Interrupt me if you need to. But then people get interrupted all day long. And then, they track email, so they see each other on email, but most people are caught in a flood of email in the real world. They see each other in meetings. They have data that spits out on their machines that they can track, but often that's disconnected from the day-to-day actions people can control. They do periodic reviews, maybe. But, that's how most managers spend their management time. And then, when something goes wrong, they jump into firefighting mode. So, managers spend a lot of time on management communication. It's just usually ad hoc, hit or miss, low structure, low substance communication. And then, problems hide below the radar. Things go wrong. And then, most managers will tell you that they spend a huge amount of their management time fighting fires, firefighting, problem solving. I realize since this is about neuroscience, we can recognize that some people get into the adrenaline and thrive on that feeling. But most people are not at their best when they're frustrated, angry, anxious. But what most managers do is they're caught in a vicious cycle. And so they're managing on autopilot, touching base, interrupting, being interrupted, looking at email, those meetings, and looking at data. They're operating on autopilot until things go wrong. So what I always tell managers is, if you spend time up front in advance in high structure, high substance communication, if you drill down and really talk through the work and tune into each person and provide each person with support and guidance and direction, then it's sort of like fire prevention. You use the word priorities. Stephen Covey, of course, is famous for the fourth generation time management. Quadrant one is things that are urgent and important. It's the building's on fire. Quadrant two is fire prevention. Things that are important but not necessarily urgent. Quadrant one is a heart attack. Quadrant two is taking a walk every day. Quadrant one is a divorce or an acrimonious fight. Quadrant two is relationship building. So in that sense, it's all about priorities.
Okay, great. And thank you for that reference too. I'm sure our listeners, if they haven't read that book yet by Mr. Covey, they'll be happy to research on that. I want to ask you a couple specific questions about some of the challenges that are in your book. I loved the write-up on challenge number 3 about jumping into an existing team, and that number one pitfall is this cliche that everyone hits the ground running. I've always personally hated that phrase, And now I know why. Can you tell our listeners what's wrong with this just hit the ground running approach?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that you don't want to get up to speed quickly. You do. But you have to crawl before you can stand, and you have to stand before you can walk, and you have to walk before you can jog, and jog before you can run. So what I always tell leaders is, if you're pulling together a team, look, if you get promoted from the inside, if you come in to take over an existing team, or if you're pulling together a new team, those are new manager challenges. The first thing you have to do is learn. And what some managers, they mistake learning as a sign of weakness, or they think learning is a position of weakness. And what I always tell managers is, no. Being in learning mode is a position of strength. It liberates you to ask questions, to keep track of details. And you should always be in learning mode, but especially at the outset. If you hit the ground running, what if you run in the wrong direction? If you hit the ground, if you have a team and everybody's new and you hit the ground running, everybody might go off running in different directions. My view is that you have to be very, very clear about mission. You have to be very, very clear about goals and getting a team aligned on goals. You have to be very clear with folks about, what are going to be the requirements, what are going to be the standard operating procedures, what are going to be the things that where we all need to be in alignment. And we all want to be going in the same direction. We don't want to be duplicating work. We don't want to be undermining each other. We want to be in the same page and going forward. So, you have to get clarity of a mission and goals, and you have to get alignment. And, you need to get everybody planning together so everybody's moving in support of one another in the same direction. And so, it's not that we don't want to get up to speed and be running. It's just that, hit the ground and stop. And then, get everybody on the same page. And then make sure you got a clear plan and you know where and when and how you're going to reconnoiter, then run.
Okay, well, thanks for that. That makes a lot of sense to me. Another thing that you're well known for is talking about the generational differences in the workplace. And you were one of the first people to call out that, hey, Generation X needs a different approach than baby boomers. And now we're all talking about millennials and even Generation Z, the kids who will soon be in the workplace. So in your research, did you find any significant differences in how a manager should approach this high structure, high substance approach based on somebody's age?
Yeah, I mean, let me start by saying, as you pointed out, we've been doing research on young people in the workplace for 21 years now, and we've been studying what we call the generational shift in numbers, norms, and values that's been underway in the workforce now, for about 20 years. So a big part of what we're looking at is as the oldest, most experienced people in the workforce are leaving, there is this age bubble in the workforce because of the baby boomers. But over the next 5 years, a lot of the first wave baby boomers are going to be leaving the workforce. And there's this youth bubble on the other end of the spectrum. There is a rising global youth tide. We look at the millennials, much like the baby boomers. If you look at the millennials born 1978 to 2000, that's a 22-year time frame. So we split that into two waves, the first wave and the second wave. The people we call Generation Z are the second wave millennials, those born 1990 to 2000. So they're the young people in the workplace. The youngest of them are 15. And they're the 20-somethings of the workplace right now, those second wave millennials. And the short answer is, they're on fast forward with self-esteem on steroids, right? They were raised by helicopter parents, but not just helicopter parents, but I call them investment cultivation parents. Their parents have been trying to create a new species of superhuman, and of course they're used to having a huge amount of support from older, more experienced people. They're the most parented, coached, counseled, taught, structured boundary generation in history. And the self-esteem movement of the 90s, which was, everyone gets a trophy, all styles are equally valid, has just, it's on steroids now. And so they're like, coming into the workplace nowadays, they have very high expectations, first and foremost for themselves. Of course, the self-esteem stuff is working. They tend to feel great about themselves. They're used to having a supercomputer in their hand at all times. But having said all of that, I always say to business leaders and managers, don't make the mistake of thinking that what you should do is ask your employees for their driver's license, check their birth date, and then somehow you know how to manage them. To me, that's silly. There are as many stories within each generation as there are people, but there are these broad trends in attitude and behavior. And the broad trend is that the workforce is becoming more and more high maintenance. The younger the person, the more high maintenance they're likely to be. The workforce is becoming more and more short-term and transactional in their thinking. It's not pay your dues, climb the ladder, do as you're told, figure out how the system can take care of you in the long term. Here's where you're going to be in 5 years. Here's where you're going to be in 10 years. Here's where you're going to be in 15 years. It's, what do you want from me today, tomorrow, and this week, and this month, and this year? And what do you have to offer me today, tomorrow, this week, this month, this year? So, look, I think people of all ages are thinking more and more this way. But the younger the person, the more likely they are to be thinking short-term and transactional, the more likely they are to be thinking, where does your job fit in my life story as opposed to where do I fit in your company? The younger they are, the more they're going to thrive on structure and boundaries. The younger they are, the more frequent feedback they're going to want. The more plugged in they're going to be. And so while I would say to, looking through the generational diversity lens is like looking through any diversity lens. You want to understand where people are coming from and where they're going. You want to appreciate and respect those differences. But the real lesson of looking through a diversity lens of any kind is that in today's environment, one size fits all doesn't work. The new young workforce, customization is everything. I always say to managers, how you want to say to them, what do you think you are, kid, a special case? The answer to that question 100% of the time is yes. Every one of them is a special case. But I always say to managers, look, everybody's a special case. It's just that some people are better at hiding it.
Okay. All right, great. Now I'm going to ask you a question that comes a little bit of left field, but I suspect you'll have a connection. I read your biography in the book, and I noticed that you're a 5th degree black belt in karate. So has that experience with that discipline and getting to that level of excellence, does that carry over into your work as a management consultant in some way?
Yeah, it carries into everything I do. I study, it's called Weichi-Ryu. It's an Okinawan, all proper karate is Okinawan in its origins. Karate is an Okinawan art, so I study, since I was 7 years old, I've had the same teacher, so I've studied now for almost 41 years, and karate practice influences everything I do. Karate Do means the way of the empty hand, and that's empty hand means, yes, fighting without weapons, but it also means trying to keep your ego in check, and recognizing that life is always a work in progress and that you always have room to get better. The art that we practice is all about think before you act, pay attention to detail, finish what you start, condition your mind and your body and your spirit, be flexible, so be strong, and so yeah, that influences everything I do. It's one of my great passions.
So what's next for you then, Bruce? What project are you working on right now that you're most excited about?
Well, gosh, every single day I'm working with leaders and managers trying to help them get better, trying to help them be strong and highly engaged, trying to help leaders provide support and guidance and direction for their people. I have a new book coming out in September. It's called Bridging the Soft Skills Gap, How to Teach the Missing Basics to Today's Young Talent. So we're very excited about that. That's, I guess that's my next big thing. That's coming out in September.
Okay, well, maybe we'll have you back. You can talk to us about that book.
Golly, I'd love to.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Bruce, for giving us so much of your time and your insight. And I encourage everybody who's listening to go to the website, learn more about Bruce, check out his books, and please continue to listen to our Brain Matters podcast and join us for the next one. So, Bruce, we will definitely look forward to talking with you again.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on, and I'd love to be on again.
All right. Thanks, everyone.